aspect of clarifying and simplifying the essential message here. Oh, by the way, today is March 8th, 2026. And we'll be live taking calls later. I have a little bit of battery power. I'm just running some errands, and I thought I would try to make sure this is very clear, why this is such a shift in thinking. Because the framework people use to interpret what they're seeing on the screen differs in these very significant ways. But there's this illusion that people who don't believe the mainstream are somehow automatically closer to the truth. But what I'm pointing out here is that there's a fundamental mistake built into mainstream and alternative, which is the passive assumption that if it's on the screen, it's real at face value. But they have a slightly different takeaway from it, but they both assume that part of it. So, for example, mainstream says real until proven fake. And of course, the media doesn't have a self-correcting mechanism to tell on itself, so that's never going to happen. So their assumption is it's all real. Alt media says it's real, but there's a cover-up, a conspiracy, a second shooter, a false flag. So they both start off with this passive assumption that it's real, but one side says it's real, but, which is why we refer to the alt media as MSM plus, with MSM being the mainstream perspective, what's on the screen. Alt media is a subset. So they still accept that, but they add their own sauce. That's the only difference. So they have the same tacit assumption, essentially, that fake until proven real, which is what we say is going too far, that we should work with what they give us and explain it with additional theories. And our approach has been minus, MSM minus, meaning no, we subtract anything that we can't verify or reasonably ascertain to be true. And as this has moved forward, and as we've accumulated more observations, research, just paying attention, we've been vindicated so many times that I don't even give the mainstream benefit of the doubt. And yet they're still given the basic story when it comes to, like, for example, all the Charlie Kirk conspiracy theories. They all agree he's dead. So they still go with the basic story. They don't go so far as to question that. And those who do are super fringe. So we're on the fringe for some reason. Those of us who are questioning the face value, who don't have our faces pressed up against the screen, we are somehow fringed. We're considered just automatically wrong, which is kind of dismissive. And I understand mainstreamers, this is way outside of their purview. They would never reach this. Conspiracy theorists are married to their theories. And if you take away the essential reality of the story, they don't have a theory. If you take away fake atrocities attributed to some group, well, then you have no reason to scapegoat that group. So what we're doing undermines belief systems, and that's why they are ignoring it. They're just not looking at it. But what I'm saying is that media skepticism, auto hoaxing, this is a time bomb. Like, it's going to go off. This isn't going to go unnoticed by the more serious thinkers who are examining fake events, critically. Not everyone's here for conspiracy candy or conspiratainment, engagement bait. Not everyone here is just a media junkie or an addict looking for a kick. This isn't, I'm all for tabloids and I'm all for conspiratainment. But what I'm saying is that there are a lot of people whose interests are not being served by having to deal with the limited perspective. And I say it as a singular. Alt media is not a separate perspective. They're operating with the same set of presuppositions. They're one and the same. It's all establishment. But there's never been, and I've been kind of reiterating this quite a bit lately, is that there's never been a platform for independent thinkers or media skeptics or critics. And we're not just like one, two, or three issues like most truthers. Like, what about 9/11? What about Sandy Hook? What about the vax? Like, they have like five or six pet issues, and it's like, no, this isn't about a handful of things, like anomalies. No, this is about systemic fakery and its long-term effects. It's the observable effects and the long-term agenda of it. And you wouldn't recognize systemic fakery if you followed the conspiracy theorists who only harp on certain events and ignore the pattern. Like some of the best minds in this, people like Jim Fetzer, deconstruct one shooting and then they think the next one is real. So they don't have the continuity because they haven't done the observation. And what we've done as a think tank for 7+ years now, I guess, is we have noticed on the day to day the level of fakery that infuses the box that everybody's in, and how it's not anomalous. These aren't random strategies or force multipliers. The word psyop does not encompass what we're looking at. This is beyond psyop. This is manufactured historical events, historical personages, and worldview curation at a global scale. This is the only conspiracy out there that is real. The conspiracy theories are all stories to keep people from noticing the only real conspiracy, which is that our entire worldview, our internal concept of the world, has been hijacked, and we've all been internalizing a simulation. And the simulation theorists don't even like this because they want to believe that the simulation is literal and it's controlled by something supernatural or beyond man. They don't want to know that a small subset of the population have managed to uh, essentially put a bad operating system in billions of minds. So when I'm describing these three ways of looking at things, these are the operating systems you have available. You can either be a automatic believer in everything, uncritical and passive, or you can be an automatic uh, conspiracy theorist and everything, where you just assume there's a cover up and an alternate story, but you never subtract from it. So again, conspiracy theories are controlled opposition in general because they don't attack the mainstream's official story. They just bounce off of it. It's like the heel in a wrestling match. That's what Alex Jones is. The conspiracy theory community, all of its influencers, Candace Owens, etc., yeah, these are heels. Or I've been describing it as triangulation, where Big Brother's the narcissist, mainstream believers are the favored one, the golden child. Alt media consumers are the scapegoats. They can do no right, and these ones can do no wrong. And this triangulation is what keeps them fighting against each other. And the mainstream automatically has the assumed high ground because they go with the Big Brother's narrative. So the triangulation is inherent in the structure. It fits with the political horseshoe, and it explains the perfect bifurcation with every single psyop that we look at. But these are the two operating systems, alt and mainstream. Both of these are passive, and both have the assumption that what's on the screen is real. So I describe them as having their faces pressed up against a big screen, no peripheral information. That's their primary frame of reference. I would describe the off-world stage perspective as having put 6 feet between ourselves and the screen, a little social distancing. And by that distance, I mean in time, no jump into conclusions, suspension of judgment, which is what they don't do in here. They're prejudiced. They have their built-in assumptions they operate from. So what they do is they reflectively react in predictable ways, and we take a pause before we make any sort of definitive claims. And we've noticed that when there's a shooting, for example, there will be tons of false leads thrown out there. And they're thrown out there so that the alt media can make themselves look dumb and unreliable. And it works. because then they get corrected. So they get put in this unfortunate position of being corrected by the mainstream and demonstrating that, oh, independent observers on the internet can't arrive at the truth. You got to wait for more authoritative sources. So I no longer take the bait. I assume the next shooter is going to be blamed on Sam Hyde, and it's going to be misgendered or assumed to be a shooter from one country. Like there's consistently these templates people want to do because it's about scoring political points. None of them care about the victims, which is pretty sick. They're exploiting the dead. Now, the fact that there's really no dead people in psyops doesn't change the fact that their behaviors are still very psychopathic. Now, I guess one other point here is that the built-in assumption of news being real or real plus a cover-up, it kind of effaces the fact that every news cycle becomes history. And that's my other point here, is that recent history, and we're focusing on 1963 to 2026, recent history is so saturated with provable staged historic events that we cannot claim that our present day consensus worldview is objective. It's not objective. There's a lot of science fiction in the science. There's a lot of atrocity propaganda. There are so many staged significant events that have years in the making. Operatives on the world stage in front of the cameras for years who are part of these productions. So the word psyop is not good enough because we're talking about events that become history. We're witnessing the manufacturing of history, and I think the biggest thing is that it's global in scale, and we can prove the level of involvement that mainstream entertainment has in shaping this history that they are performing for us and that we are participating in, or most people are participating in. We've actually separated the two timelines here because you have two timelines. You have the real world, we're going, linear, past, present, future. And then you have the fake events planned from the future or planned for the future. Who knows how far in advance that they mix in our real time through the medium of news and essentially a psyop. So they simulate events routinely, and these get fused in the public mind. So this fusion of real and fake, this is the central confusion that characterizes the world stage. And all these lies merge and become permanent fixtures in our history going back. So the assumption that what's on the screen is real is bad enough, but there's also the assumption that everything that came before through the screen is equally real, or real plus having some conspiracy intrigue. But neither of these views, neither of these approaches to comprehending what's coming through the screen take account for long-term fakery and its effects. Something I'm calling here history bending. So what we're unveiling here, and it's going to become clearer in the coming weeks, what I'm really working on unveiling here in a very simple, easy to understand way, is that we have, as a society, we have lost any kind of objectivity when it comes to our worldview. And that's because our worldview has been hijacked by some central overarching authority over everybody's minds. And it constitutes a new world religion, like a one world religion. It's supplanted religion. And, honestly, people should be perturbed, bothered, annoyed, or something. But I think they've been so subdued and conquered that they don't understand what what this actually means. When we're talking about what I call a soft totalitarianism. But anyway, if you're happy in the Truman Show, you can go with the script, what I call the program. You can remain programmed. But if you don't want to be programmed, and I have a list of reasons why you would want to detach from it, not to mention peace of mind, inner peace instead of inner war, lower stress, no reactivity, can't be triggered, less susceptible to demagogues and fear porn and agitprop. Like there's a lot of reasons you might want to detach. Maybe because extreme political views or opinions, or even moderate ones, can alienate you. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why media itself is just toxic. But if you want to separate the two timelines, you have to recognize the script goes into the future, the meta script. And by recognizing that, you see that there's an intentional confusion of real and fake every day. And when you can see through it, then you can actually perceive two separate timelines, the real one and the program. This the non-stop train of fake events. So you can't even claim to be deprogrammed if you're not cognizant of the long-term bending of history and what it does to the present consensus worldview, which is highly significant because the worldview is, as I describe it, bifurcated, polarized, and every fake event triggers people in predictable ways. But what we're revealing here, I'm saying, is that we can prove unequivocally how recent history has been bent, distorted, and how entertainment works with government to make this work. So this is just high-tech propaganda. I would describe this as a religious paradigm and system, a world church, like a state church, but surreptitiously they've replaced the role of traditional religion, and it's become the dominant force when it comes to worldview. And that's what I think is the most intriguing thing, is that the religions have been rendered irrelevant, and they're replacing all of the various superstitions with modern superstitions that people think are scientifically held propositions. Like, I believe in aliens because I'm believing in science. Well, that's still a superstition. It's a science fiction that they've added into the worldview through psyops, government created mythologies. But one other point here is that we are definitely a deeply superstitious and gullible society, and there is no platform for objectivist thought or media deconstructionism where the saner minds could actually put this thing together. They've excluded that conversation from public discourse. They open the Overton window to demons and aliens, but not to people calling into question the media's role as arbiter of reality. So we're creating that. So the off-world stage perspective is the objective here. The objective isn't to wake up the people who are programmed. It's to find all those who aren't going with the program and point out, hey, look, there's a third branch of media for people who think critically, who consume media in an active and careful way rather than the passive, you know, gullibility, the maid's patients, how they take it all in. If you don't have a functioning mental immune system, there are so many clever ways they can get stuff into your head. I was even thinking today about mind viruses and how many conspiracy theories are actually just mind viruses. That if you had your mental immune systems up in terms of recognizing rhetoric and fallacy, you wouldn't have fallen for them. And I've fallen for things myself. And it's more important now than ever to be able to reverse engineer or call out a staged event just based on how the story is presented and its full context, rather than relying on the visuals, because they're getting so much better with the AI that they're going to be able to fake everything, and to the point where even if you have a lot of experience with digital art and editing, etc., it won't be any help to you. So we have to assume we're hoodwinked moving into the future. All right, well, we'll be live later on today when I have a bit more time. I'm just doing some outlines for my whiteboards, because, again, the whole point of this is to explain it in such a way that people who are new to it can understand what I'm saying. And the significance, which is, again, the thing that's hard to grasp, the significance of the fact that our history has been fabricated for 63 years plus. We're focusing on basically Kennedy until now, but we're gonna expand. I'm just basically laying the foundations so that it can be expanded with a lot of crowdsourced intel and additional researchers, because it's a big project. What we're doing is we're basically separating the two timelines. as far back as we can. And then I guess the other point of it too is mapping out the involvement of entertainment with psyops. To me, that's a scandal, but I don't know if the public will see it as such. The very fact that you can name celebrities and directors and actors who are directly or 1 degree separated from psychological warfare ops being waged on the public. Like, how is that not a scandal? All right, we'll be in Discord and we'll have phones open this evening.